The Epomaker TH80 Pro was a good value for anyone looking for a customizable mechanical keyboard with enjoyable switches, quality keycaps, and good battery life. Epomaker has now released the TH80 Pro V2 with some changes from the original, including QMK firmware and a color LCD screen. Let's take a closer look and see if it's an improvement over the original. And just for good measure, we're also taking a look at the EK21-X number pad for those extra long spreadsheet sessions. Before we dive in, I want to mention that Epomaker sent me the TH80 Pro V2 and the EK21 number pad for the purpose of reviewing them. I was not paid to make this video, and Epomaker has no input on my review. I do have some affiliate links for you in the description if you're interested in picking up either of these and you'd like to support this channel. Most of what I liked about the original TH80 Pro had a lot to do with the balance of features and price. The TH80 Pro V2 continues to present itself as a good value for the price by staying at the $99 price point but offering some upgrades. Whether those upgrades are improvements will depend on the execution as well as your own preferences. We're also checking out the EK21-X number pad here, which is a relative of the EK75 keyboard that I reviewed a few months ago. A separate number pad can, of course, be a great addition for anyone who prefers a more compact layout most of the time, but also has a use for the number pad occasionally, or if you just like to keep them in separate locations on your desk. Let's start by covering the features and specs of each of them, and then we'll start talking pros and cons and my overall impressions. The TH80 Pro V2 is a 75% layout keyboard with 79 keys, a 1.14-inch color LCD screen, and an ANSI layout. It is not currently available in an ISO layout, but Epomaker does offer the original TH80 Pro in an ISO layout, so it may be available in the future. The construction is ABS plastic for the case, and there are two color options currently available, black and white. The dimensions are 323 by 145 by 45 millimeters, and the weight is about 700 grams or just about 1.5 pounds. There are two position fold-out feet for a total of 3 typing angles. Connectivity includes Bluetooth for 3 devices, 2.4 GHz with a 500 Hz polling rate, and USB-C wired also with 500 Hz polling. The internal components include a flex-cut polycarbonate plate and hot swappable PCB with JWIC sockets compatible with 3 and 5-pin switches. The mounting is foam sandwich-style gaskets, and sound dampening includes foam between the PCB and plate, a switch pad, and under PCB foam. Stabilizers are plate-mounted, however there is support on the PCB for screw-in stabilizers. Switch options include Epomaker Mulan, Flamingo, and Wisteria linear switches, Budgerigar tactile, or Sea Salt silent. The keycaps on the black model are SA-like, double shot, and maybe PBT or ABS, more on that later. The white color option includes cherry profile die-sub PBT keycaps. The backlighting includes full south-facing RGB with key commands to control the brightness and modes. The battery capacity is 3000 mAh, and Epomaker does not provide an estimated use time on their website. The TH80 Pro V2 includes QMK firmware with VIA compatibility for customization on Windows, Mac, and Linux. There are also pre-programmed Mac and Windows modes with the mode displayed on one of the default LCD screens. The LCD screen can be customized with Epomaker's image customization application, which at the time of recording is available on Windows only. The TH80 Pro V2 is available from Epomaker and Amazon for $99.99 US. The EK21-X is a dedicated number pad with an encoder knob which is currently available in black only. Construction is full aluminum to match the EK75 keyboard. Internals include a hot swappable PCB with south-facing RGB lighting, polycarbonate plate with gasket mounts, and plate-mounted stabilizers. Sound dampening includes a switch pad, pour-on foam between the PCB and plate, and case bottom foam. The included keycaps are cherry profile die-sub PBT. Connectivity includes Bluetooth, 2.4 GHz, and wired. The battery capacity is 1000 mAh. The firmware is QMK with VIA compatibility, and the EK21-X is available from Epomaker for $69.99 US. All right, let's begin with pros and cons of the TH80 Pro V2. As for the pros, like the original, the build quality is good for the price. It's all plastic and doesn't exactly feel what you would call premium, but it's also not disappointing. And in fact, I would say the overall build and case design is a little step up from the original. The switches, they're good. As I've experienced with other Epomaker switches, the Mulan switches that they sent me in this example are enjoyable and they seem to have a good factory lube. They're not pingy. In general, the quality seems nice. The switch options are also good. I've actually used all of them now that I have tried the Mulan switches here. It's available with the Flamingo linears, the Wisteria linears, the Mulan linears, as well as the Budgerigar tactile and the Sea Salt silent. I've actually enjoyed all of them. If I had to pick a favorite, it was probably the Wisteria linears. The stabilizers are plate mounted, however, the PCB does have support for screw-in PCB mounted stabilizers. I haven't had an issue with the included stabilizers though. They're fairly quiet as far as plate mounted stabilizers go. There's a little bit of wobble here, but nothing significant and no unpleasant sounds. They're not rattly, so overall, I'm happy with the stabilizers. The gasket mounting is the foam sandwich style that you find on Keychron gasket mount keyboards, and combined with some flex cuts on the polycarbonate plate, there is more flex here than the original. The TH80 Pro original really did not have flex pretty much at all. It was a lot firmer. So if you're looking for a little bit more flexibility in the typing feel, then you should enjoy the TH80 Pro V2. Overall, I would call the typing feel an improvement over the original. Now I'm gonna mention both a pro and a con about the keycaps. I actually can't comment on the keycaps that come on the other color option, which they call white, more retro white, I think, but they're actually different keycaps. Those are cherry profile, and I think they look like they're die sub. The black color option here comes with what they call SA-like keycaps. They are double shot, and I'm honestly not sure if they're PBT or ABS. They feel a little bit lightweight to me, and they are quite shiny, so I'm honestly not sure here. The profile is kind of like the height of OEM with SA-like sculpting. Whatever they are, they're not bad quality, so that's the pro. We'll get back to the keycaps in the cons. There's also both a pro and a con aspect to the firmware and the customization experience. The Pro V2 has QMK firmware and is VIA compatible, while the original TH80 Pro used Epomaker's own driver software for customization. Now, I prefer VIA for the OS compatibility and consistency, and I had no issue customizing the TH80 Pro V2 after loading the base file in VIA. So in terms of just remapping and adding macros, I consider this an improvement, so that's where the pro is. But I'll mention something else about the customization overall in the cons. Now, the overall sound out of the box is still nice, just like it was with the original. It is a little different though. Even with these less dense feeling keycaps, it's actually a deeper sound than I was expecting, and it's fairly deep for an all plastic keyboard. There's also really no unpleasant sounds here, and the switches are not pingy. Of course, sound is subjective, but there's nothing here that I feel needs fixing, just maybe tuning to your personal taste. Now, I also had a good experience with the wireless connections, which for me has been pretty consistent with Epomaker keyboards. The 2.4 gigahertz connection worked well for me in my testing with my main work computer at a distance of about 3 feet without anything significant obstructing the line of sight. Bluetooth also worked well for me with both my Mac and my Windows computers. Really no issue there. There's one little detail about the wireless connection that I will mention in the cons though. Now, in between pros and cons, I often have things that I call neutral, things that for some people would be pros, for other people could be cons. They're just generally subjective, so I have a couple for the TH80 Pro V2 in the neutral category. The first thing is the LCD screen. It's there. It's interesting. I like the clock. I like the date. I'm kind of boring that way. I don't personally use the other features of the LCD. If you do like this, it is a pro. If you'd rather have an encoder knob here instead of a screen, then it's a con. And if you're kind of indifferent about it like I am, then it's neutral. Now, when it comes to the battery life, I'm putting this kind of in the neutral category as well. It's 3,000 milliamp hour. The original TH80 Pro had a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, so it's actually a lower capacity battery. And now it has an LCD screen to power, unless you turn it off, of course. So I'm not calling this a con because at this point I have not experienced poor battery life. I haven't been disappointed with it. Now, Epomaker doesn't consistently publish estimated battery use times for their keyboards on their site, so I don't know what they expect the battery life to be. But in a week of use with the backlighting on a low setting and using the wireless connections, the battery didn't die on me. There also is a little battery level indicator in the LCD, which is nice. I think I can safely say this is not a keyboard I would expect to get like over a month of use out of between charges, unless maybe you've just got all the lights and the screen turned off. All right, now we can move on and talk about some cons for the TH80 Pro V2. Let's start with the customization experience. When you consider it overall, it's a little clunky. You can do your remapping and your macros with VIA, as I mentioned in the Pros. That's great. However, to customize the LCD screen, and even just to get the time and date to sync from your computer, you need to use separate software from Epomaker, which at the time of recording this is only available on Windows. With some of their other keyboards that have an LCD screen, like the TH80X, they've stayed with Epomaker driver software, so they don't have QMK firmware in that keyboard. But what that does is it allows you to use Epomaker driver software for everything: remapping, macros, lighting adjustments, and customizing the screen all in one application. So while I do generally prefer QMK firmware to proprietary firmware, it kind of makes the overall customization experience feel a little disjointed, and it's unfortunate that currently there's no Mac version of the app to customize the LCD. All right, another con here, when it comes to the design and the styling, there are only two color options currently, and the keycap style is determined by the color option that you choose. You get cherry profile with the retro white color and the more sculpted SA-like keycaps with the black option. That might be a little nitpicky, but I'm counting it as a con because it just doesn't feel very cohesive to have such significant differences between the styling of the two color options. All right, another con here is the polling rates over wired and 2.4 gigahertz connections is 500 hertz, which makes it less than some competitors like the Keychron V1 Max, which offer 1000 hertz polling over both wired and 2.4 gigahertz connections at the same price point. So if you're planning on using the TH80 Pro V2 for gaming, just keep that in mind. Now, another con about the wireless is that the lag time on the wireless connection seems a little bit long to me. On 2.4 gigahertz, for example, when both the keyboard and the computer have gone to sleep, I was able to count to 4 after pressing a key before my screen came back on. Not a huge deal, but you know, it's noticeable. The last con that I'll mention is they did not make disassembly any easier than it was with the original. Now, this doesn't apply to everybody. If you have no intention of opening up your TH80 Pro V2, then obviously this is not a con. But if you intend to open it up, the clips that hold it together, they're kind of difficult to pry apart to get it open. I was really hoping that on V2, Epomaker would go with a simple, screw assembly like the Keychron V1 Max to make it easier to disassemble, but they kept the clips. That's not a deal breaker, but I wanted to mention it. All right, now let's move on and talk about some pros and cons for the EK21-X number pad. In terms of pros, we have a nice build quality here. It's an aluminum case, which the quality of matches the EK75 keyboard, which I liked quite a bit. It feels very solid, so it's definitely great alongside that keyboard or any keyboard that has similar build quality. We also have an encoder knob here, which is a nice addition in addition to the number pad. So it's like adding two features to your compact keyboard if you didn't already have a knob, which you don't with the TH80 Pro V2. So if you were kind of sad that you don't have the encoder knob here and you wanted, maybe an optional number pad, but also missed the encoder knob, then you get both with this number pad. You also have tri-mode connectivity, which means you don't have to worry about another USB cable, so that's nice. However, I should point out, this is kind of a con, kind of not a con. There is no unified receiver option here from Epomaker. So if you want to use, say, 2.4 gigahertz, you would have to use both the one from your keyboard and the one from the number pad, taking up 2 USB ports. The battery capacity also seems good. I can't say how long it will last with all of the lights on, but again, I used it for a week with it, having its sleep mode where the lights turn off, and had no issue with the battery. You also have a very nice sound and feel out of the box. I would call it definitely on par with my experience with the EK75 keyboard. You've got a good flexible typing feel here, and it's definitely comfortable if you spend a lot of time using your number pad. And lastly, you do have VIA compatibility here if you need to customize, if you do any macros with your number pad, or if you want to change any of the separate keys from the numbers to do anything else, you can. All right, there are a few cons here with this number pad. First of all, disassembly is apparently discouraged. There are rubber feet over the screws and they are really stuck on there. I could not remove them with my hands, so you would need probably a tool to remove the rubber feet to get to the screws to disassemble it. So if you wanted to do anything besides changing the switches or keycaps on it, it's going to take some work to open up. There's also currently just this black color option with one set of keycaps. Another con here is that I had some clunkiness with the 2.4 gigahertz connection. It's actually my first time having an issue with any Epomaker product and a 2.4 gigahertz connection, but the range just doesn't seem as good as it did with the EK75 or other keyboards from Epomaker. It had an unreliable signal at my usual distance of about 3 feet with minimal to no things obstructing the line of sight. Performance did improve when I just picked it up and put it closer to where the receiver is, but I also experienced a little bugginess with the connection. It almost seems like the entire connection resets when it goes to sleep, and my first key press wouldn't register at all. It would just, the green connection light for the 2.4 gigahertz connection would flash when I press a key after it's gone to sleep, and that key press doesn't register. It's like that's what wakes it up, and then the next key press is the first one to actually show up. That's not the experience I've had with other Epomaker keyboards using that connection, so that was a little bit annoying. All right, so let's wrap it up for both the TH80 Pro V2 and the EK21-X number pad. As far as the TH80 Pro V2 goes, it's another solid 75% keyboard from Epomaker with a good balance of features and price. It's not quite perfect, and if you're not interested in having an LCD screen, then I think options like the Keychron V1 Max may be a more compelling option, as long as you're happy with the styling of it, because you're gonna get higher polling rates, easier disassembly, and great battery life for the same price. But if you prefer the styling of one of the two options available here, or if you're looking for the LCD screen, I don't see any major deal breakers for the TH80 Pro V2. As for the EK21-X number pad, I'm a little more torn on that. If you specifically have the EK75 keyboard from Epomaker and would like to have a number pad to pair with it, then it certainly goes well from a build quality and styling standpoint. But with the clunky 2.4 gigahertz performance that I experienced, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everyone looking for a separate number pad. All right, so that'll do it for this video. Let me know what you think of both the TH80 Pro V2 and the EK21-X number pad. Let me know in the comments if you picked one of these up and how you're liking it. Don't forget to subscribe to the Semi-Pro Tech and Gear channel, and while you're here, why don't you check out one of these videos? I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Thanks everybody, see you next time.